Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. Natty training versus enhanced training. What are the differences? You may be curious. First, a caveat. What do we mean by enhanced? Well, watch our video that we put out very recently, How Much Muscle Do Steroids Add? I'm not sure what Scott the videographer actually titled it, but something like that. Hopefully we'll link it for you guys. Watch it before you watch this so you have a lot of context for what we mean by natty and not. You don't have to watch for this video, but it'd be kind of neat. Also, it will increase our clicks. That gives us more money. It gives me more Lamborghinis. And you know the only reason I'm alive is to collect Lamborghinis. Now, per that above video, I will treat all enhanced people as advanced natties who have chosen to become enhanced. Okay? They are already advanced lifters, training for 10 years, and then they go enhanced. Now what are the differences? Because a lot of the differences we see in training natty versus enhanced is actually training beginner versus advanced. Because very few people are enhanced and super jacked and famous when they're beginners, because it just takes a while, right? So, training differences. I count 4 major ones, and I'm sure I missed a bunch of little ones. Please ask in the comments below. I'll try to address it, maybe make a follow-up video. First training difference is enhanced people should probably take longer warm-ups because they're not really big and really strong, and if they rush into training, they can get hurt. Another thing about drugs is, generally speaking, a lot of the ones, especially the bodybuilding drugs, they make your muscles really big and they make your tendons a little bigger, but not as big as you would think. So it actually, when you are balloon muscle jacked up, IFB Pro look motherfucker, you can legitimately just get more hurt in any one given occasion. And if you warm up for longer, it obviates some of that risk. So huge deal here. Number 2 difference. Using pre-exhaust more often. So doing some leg extensions, some leg presses before you get to the squats and the lunges, something like that. That really is to just increase your stimulus to fatigue ratio, because if you did squats first, the amount of load it would take to zap your quads properly zaps your entire spinal column, lower back, glutes, systemic fatigue, crazy. Like if Big Ramy did, like squats first and proper technique and everything warmed up, he'd be squatting in the 700 to 800s for reps with quads his size. That is not sustainable for most people, actually for almost anyone. With a guy the size of Big Ramy's waist, which is to say very small, maybe even less sustainable. So someone like him might opt for doing some leg extensions first to get the quads going, then leg presses, and then doing squats after with only 400 to 600 pounds. What a weasel that guy, right? And that doesn't make sense on paper to folks that are natural or beginners, because generally you want some compound first to kind of synthesize integrated movement, produce a lot of force, no limiting factors. But stimulus to fatigue ratio has to be considered, and you don't want axial spinal fatigue and tons of systemic. So as a more advanced person who is enhanced, you want to make sure that maybe you're doing some pre-exhaust, only as indicated, but a lot of times it's going to be like, look, I can't bench first anymore because my shoulders will fall off. So do a shitload of flies. Then when I bench, my pecs are a limiting factor. That's great. I can still bench. I don't have to bench with 500 for reps. I can just do 350 and I get all or similar benefits, right? Similar level of raw stimulus magnitude, maybe a little bit lower, but then much less fatigue. And on the trade-off, it's worth. Next, fewer lower rep sets and more higher rep sets. Why? The lower rep sets fewer is because the risk to reward of sets under 8 reps is just not worth it. Remember, you're more likely to get hurt, and you're so fucking brutally strong and your muscles are so big and tendons not so big that sets of 5, gee whiz, we know roughly the same amount of growth occurs, at least in the medium term, months, from anywhere between sets of 5 and 30 repetitions. If there's a huge injury risk for sets of 5, much smaller one for sets of 10, way smaller for 15, and down the line, when you're big and jacked and much more likely to get hurt because you're so big and jacked, it may not be a smart idea anymore to do lots of sets of 5 and stuff like that. I know a lot of bodybuilders still do it, and they're probably wrong for doing it. Another thing is, when your muscles get really big, especially when a high proportion of those fibers are faster twitch, they start to sequester metabolites very, very well, which is kind of a bad thing because that means they tighten up a ton. They get a crazy burn and crazy cramps. The good thing is the sequestration of metabolites probably causes a decent hypertrophic stimulus, huge pump, a huge metabolite independent stimulus from lactate and things like that. So for people who are really jacked and enhanced, and by the way, a lot of the drugs actually contribute to that metabolite sequestration. They give you crazy, crazy pumps and crazy burns that you wouldn't have without drugs. Sets of 20 to 30 reps are fucking brutal. Whereas for someone who is natty and smaller, they do like set of 25 and they're like, I don't know, man, it just feels like I'm doing a lot of reps. I can't really feel the tension. Yeah, I get a little bit of burn at the end, but not much. But for folks with big muscles, sets of 20 to 30 are unreal, and relative to the heavyweights, they now start to have a pretty decent advantage on the stimulus to fatigue scale. Related, a good idea for folks that are enhanced is to do less dynamic lifting, more pausing, less change in direction quickly. So pause at the bottom of bench versus bouncing, slower eccentrics and stuff like that, even controlled concentrics so that you don't snap your shit up. Again, when you're enhanced, your chance of injury is higher. Never mind the pre-contest period when you take anti-estrogens and all this other crazy shit, your chance of injury really fucking skyrockets. You got to take care of yourself. Another thing is, like, you're putting all these chemicals in your body, you don't want to get hurt. It's a big investment, right? It's almost like, how do you drive a real fancy car? Fucking carefully, right? You don't do shit with, like, if your dad gave you a 1998 Toyota Corolla and he's like, fuck it up, the car costs me nothing at this point, you're going to fucking drive the shit out of it. If, your dad gives you a, whatever, I don't know, what the fuck is an expensive car? Rolls Royce. Mercedes-Benz. You fucking ever been in a Benz before? You fucking fuck. Yeah, like shit like that. Your dad gives you the Benz, you're going to be careful with that shit. When you're an IFBB pro bodybuilder or top national level guy, your body's a fucking Mercedes-Benz. I'm like the Mercedes-Benz of bodies. Damn it, why am I not Italian and from New Jersey? That's right, those two things can be the same. Last one. So anyway, careful. You're just basically being more careful on a lot of these. Last one, more extended fatigue management. Connective tissues take a beating when you're that fucking jacked, and a lot of times the substances don't help much either. So folks will take breaks from blasting the gear to take down turns of gear or no gear at all, and then they'll go 1 month to 4 months per year in many cases of real easy training, which is different from natties who do, a week here, 2 weeks, 3 weeks here and there. But if a natty person is taking like 4 months off of anything you would consider hard training, even at maintenance, you'd be like, well, are we waiting on something? But for folks on a ton of gear, when you're running the gear, shit isn't business. When you're not running the gear, you got to cool it because everything has got to heal up. And sometimes you're just buying time because if you ran gear all year round, you would just die really soon. Those are the big training differences. Here are some things that do not predictably change just because you're on anabolics now as an advanced natty making the switch. Accumulation to deload lengths do not change. They fucking don't. Okay, people say, like, when I'm taking gear, I can train forever and not deload. Guess what, dumb motherfucker? You're not training hard enough per week. Or you started gear so goddamn early that you're like a beginner natty on gear. Yeah, of course you don't have to deload, but also you don't have to read books and do other shit smart people do. You should be taking gear if and only if you can barely stay above water in a 3-to-1 accumulation to deload paradigm as a natty. Then you take gear and you go to a 4-to-1. And as you age and as you get bigger and bigger and bigger and fatigue accumulates, you should be able to just keep that 4-to-1 by increasing how much gear you're using until you finish your career, get out of the whole fucking thing. So the whole idea about, like, well, if you're on drugs, you don't need to deload, it hurts my soul to think about. Next one, set numbers or frequencies. Volumes are MEV to MRV, minimum effective volume to maximum recoverable. They're influenced by a ton of factors. And again, because this whole conversation is referenced to advanced natties, yes, once you are an advanced natty and you go with gear, your MEV drops and your MRV rises. Notice that average is still the same. You can train more and you can train less. And you just generally get good results everywhere. As you get bigger on gear, the volumes generally don't change because you're getting bigger and it takes more to grow. But at the same time, you're taking more fatigue hits, but you're raising the gear. It generally tends to stabilize that thing. So you can essentially kind of replicate your last 5 years of natty training as far as numbers are concerned, other than the fact that you're using more weight, with another 5 to 10 years of gear use. So a lot doesn't actually change if you're using it intelligently. Again, if you start after 3 months of training, you start taking gear, yeah, the shit will go wild. You'll do double the number of sets or half the number of sets and all works great, but that's a really stupid idea. Use of drop sets or other intensity techniques. Yes, it has a bit more of an effect with gear, relatively speaking, because of the metabolite sequestration thing, but generally it's not like categorically more or less effective. Like, what I don't want you guys to think is someone's like doing drop sets and you turn to your buddy in the gym and you're like, it's because he's on fucking gear. It doesn't work for us natties. The fuck out of here. Drop sets work great for natties. They work great for people on gear. It's more of a true statement when guys are doing heavy sets of 5 and be like, why doesn't that guy do it? Like, because he's on gear. That's more true than the other thing around. So a lot of times people think, oh, these special strategies are just for gear users. No, the special strategies work for everyone. It's unfortunately the super heavy, hardcore compound lifting doesn't tend to be as good of a trade-off for guys on gear that are super jacked anymore. And pretty much most of everything else. There's this idea that gear is both a get-out-of-jail-free card for dumb shit that you're doing if you're on gear, and a get-out-of-jail-free card for saying dumb shit about people on gear. Or like, well, yeah, the only reason he does that is he's on gear. Most of that is literally just made up on the spot by people who have a grandiose sense of self-importance that they have to jack up by making fun of others. Damn, that got deep. Folks, that's all I have. Hey, next week, why don't we talk about nutrition and how that's altered with enhanced and natties? Am I the new Derek More Plates, More Dates? I could never do as good of a job as he does on all that stuff, and I'll never get super in-depth on this. Hopefully, never. But I'll do at least one more video for the love of God. That should wrap up our whole foray into this dark side of the world. I feel like I'm Frodo going to Mordor with this whole video series. Hey, Scott the Video Guy, do you want to be my Samwise?
I'd rather be, like, Smeagol.
You'd rather be Smeagol, great. Scott the Video Guy is fired. See you guys next time. Who says that?